Good evening everybody. As always, I'll give it a few minutes for everyone to catch in and get set up. Tonight is the skirt making tutorial. So we're using cotton fabric tonight, so a nice woven one. So ideal for cotton, polycotton, light denims like chambrays, linens, that kind of thing. So there's two different waistband options. There's a simple skirt, which has got just a simple elasticated waistband, which is an absolute staple. But the one I'm going to show you tonight is something called a paper bag waistband, which means it's got like an additional frill over the top of the elastic. So I've popped together a little help sheet, which I've just posted on Facebook. I've posted it in tonight's event, and I've also posted it on the main page. So I'm hoping the quality of the text is alright. Hi Emily and Rachel. I've got it right tonight. Skirts tonight, not Monday. So hopefully this sort of step by step will just break it down in case you forget or you've not caught some of the measurements or just getting a bit confused with some of the maths. So I promise it's very simple. So the first thing I'm going to do today is just talk about measuring in terms of buying your fabric and cutting your pieces out. So the two measurements you're going to need are a waist measurement, so wherever your little person would like this skirt to sit, and I find it easy to do it in centimetres. I would probably stick with that, and then the whole process is easy because all the seam allowance and hem allowances are all in centimetres, and then you're not swapping from inches to centimetres. And the second measurement you want to take is from where you would like your skirt to sit. Everyone's very different. I like it quite high. When I measured Daisy, it was like right under a tummy, to where you want the skirt to stop. So I measured Daisy. I made her this little lilac skirt on Monday in readiness for Monday. So I know that her ideal length is 35 centimetres. So I'm going to stick with the same measurements I made, and obviously just for doing the frill, the paper bag waistband at the top. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was measuring your rectangles. Now on the handout it does say you might need two rectangles like to form a front and a back piece, but it's highly likely you'll probably just need one long strip. So I've got a roll of fabric. So fabrics come in different lengths. Generally cottons are about 112 centimetres. This one's from like 142, very random, but normally they are about 110 to 150. So obviously if you've got a longer width of fabric, then it's likely you'll fit it all in one strip. So there's no point taking one strip, cutting it in half, to then sew it back together again. So you might as well just do a skirt with the one side seam rather than two. So Daisy's waist measurement was about 60 centimetres. She's one of those poor people who tends to bloat, and her stomach size changes quite a lot, so elasticated waistbands are quite good for her. So if I doubled Daisy's waistband of 60, it would give me the width of 120 centimetres. Now I'm using the teal bunny fabric, which is 150 wide, so of course it fit on one strip. If you had a fabric that was 112 centimetres wide, and obviously by timesing by 2 the waist measurement, then of course it wouldn't fit all in one long strip. So when we did the adult skirt making last week, I times my waist measurement by 1.5. Now I'd probably recommend something like that for an older child or an adult. If I doubled the amount of fabric by twice, it'd look like a tutu and it probably wouldn't look particularly flattering. But younger children can get away with doubling the amount of fabric that's in their waist. So the basic measurements are the waist measurement times 2 will form the amount of fabric you need, and then we're also going to do some different lengths depending on which style waistband you go for. So if your child's waist measurement, when you've doubled it, straddles more than the width of the fabric, then you'll need to buy twice in length. Now say for instance the width of the fabric is 112 centimetres but you need 115, I wouldn't worry about that, like only if it's a lot more. So you need to buy another additional length, so rather than fitting it on half a metre, you need to buy the full metre. So Daisy's waist measurement was 60, so I'd need, my back piece would be 60 and my front piece would be 60. So obviously you'd have quite a lot of wastage on your fabric, but you need to buy more. Now, I've done hers all in one piece, and not worried too much about the volume, but generally you kind of double their waist measurement. So I'm going to do mine in one long strip because I've got a nice longer length of fabric. So what we'll do first in terms of our sewing is we are going to sew the side seam. So we're going to do a French seam. So a French seam, if you did or have been doing any of the drawstring bags, you will know what a French seam is. It's a nice enclosed seam, so especially if you're getting lots of wear out of things, it means it's going to last a really nice long time, and nice and neat on the inside as well as on the outside. So the first step is to take your shorter end. So I've cut my strip down to size, and like I said, I'm just doing the one piece because I can fit it all on my width. So don't forget to either screenshot or download the instruction sheet just as a bit of something to scribble on or look back on. So wrong sides together, and I'm just going to pin down that short edge, which will be the side of the skirt. So of course, if you had two pieces, if you had an older child or you're doing this for an adult, then you'd need to probably repeat this twice. Oh no, the signal's really bad. Oh dear. I was hoping that it was quite good. I don't know what the pitch quality's like there. It seems to be quite good here. If Thursday seems to be a night where the quality isn't very good, then we might have to rethink about whether we do it on Thursday night. So I've pinned my side seam. I've got wrong sides together, which will feel quite strange, and I'm just going to use a really tiny seam allowance of 1/4 of an inch. Oh good, I'm glad there's some people that's okay. Starting to worry that technology was letting me down. So I'm going to use a very small 1/4 of an inch or 1/2 centimetre seam allowance. I'm just going to have zigzags because that was the last thing I was doing. And I'm going to do my securing stitches. So 3 stitches back, forward, 3 stitches back, and then the full length of my side seam. So as always, I'll try and keep a little eye on questions popping up, so feel free if you've got one just to pop it in, and when I see it jump up, I will try and answer it. And then finishing with those 3 reverse stitches backwards and then 3 forwards again. So I'm always tripling my ends so that it's nice and secure. Like that. And then the next thing I want to do is just iron that seam. Just see if my head's in shot on this. Yeah, you can see enough of my head, I think. So now my strip is now a tube. So I'm going to turn it right sides together, which will feel a little bit more regular. And what you want to do when you're doing this is really kind of rub at your seam with your fingers and your thumb till the stitches, the seam you've just sewn, sits right on the very edge. What the fabric will try and do is try and kind of bounce inside, and then you'll end up sewing that down and getting little hairy fuzzy bits. So really rub all the way along the length of that seam to get a really nice crisp finish on it. All the way along like that. So if you're finding when you're doing this that you can still see bits of fraying fabric poking out once you've done your French seam, you might want to trim this bit of the seam down slightly just to reduce it even more, just so it definitely gets encased with the next line of stitching, because obviously you don't want little bits of frilly bits down the side of your skirt where you don't want them. Oh, it'd help if I plug my iron in. Definitely more effective when you've got electricity to your iron. That's better. Yeah, this is my favourite pleated skirt that I've made after really worrying that it was a complete and utter disaster. I absolutely love it. And then the night after, I made my sister a green one, which she got on Monday, and she loves that too. So I feel I'm on a bit of a roll of more jerseys coming today, more colours, new colours. So I'm like, the temptation. So next seam length I'm going to do, so I enclose that 1/2 centimetre, is a full centimetre. And I'm going to do the same principles that I was doing last time, starting with 3 stitches forward and 3 stitches back just to secure everything. And then ending with those securing stitches as well, so that when you look to the right side, you should find that it's nice and secure. So I've got the odd kind of straggly thread coming through, but nothing that I'm too worried about. Obviously you can just snip those off, but you shouldn't be able to see any of that seam poking through there. Nice and crisp. Oh, this actually is from, I think it's from Home Bargains, but we did do them for social sewing. Probably about a year or so ago, and we just made them using a jam jar lid, and they are literally the most handy thing ever. Since I've been packing all my orders and it's been a bit crazy, it's like an absolute godsend every time I'm doing bias binding and elastic and things like that. So the next step we're going to do is the waistband. Now the reason we're going to do that before we do the hem is so that ideally you would try it on your little person that you're making it for and just check the length is right. Obviously you can cut fabric off, but if you've done a beautiful hem and then realised it was way too long and then you had to chop it all off, you'd be furious. So we're going to do the waistband, and it starts similar. So I've done what's called a memory hem, so I've pressed it a little bit just so that I don't bore you all too much. Like, I am the queen of waffling, but there's probably only so much you can take. So the first step for both the regular hem, the regular waistband and the paper bag waistband is to turn over the top of your skirt by 1 centimetre all the way around, like I said, which I've just slightly prepped. So when I did this waistband, and I'm hoping that you'll be able to see that, it is white stitching on fairly light fabrics, I'm not sure, so it's just a very simple casing. So a bit like if you're doing shorts, which we've got in the pipeline, or pyjama bottoms or something like that, just like you would do with them. All you do is turn over the top again by about 3.5 centimetres. Now I've put on the instructions you could either use 25mm elastic or 19mm elastic. If you're using 19mm elastic and you didn't want it to kind of slide around the case, then you could always make that a little bit smaller, like 3 centimetres, just so it's not so it's a bit more snug in that casing. But for my paper bag waistband, I'm going to turn it over by about 6.5 centimetres like that. So a little bit more. I'll just grab my sheet. Yeah. And keep pulling that extra fabric over. So it looks like quite a lot, but don't worry. So if you thought the frill, the sort of ruffle that you get with a paper bag waistband is a bit too dramatic, then you can always reduce that a little bit. So the thing that I didn't talk about at the beginning, I was talking about waist measurements and how much fabric you would need. I didn't talk too much about length, purely because I knew I would have a bit of waffling time to do, so I'll do that now. So when you are taking that measurement and you've decided how long your model would like it, so Daisy's measurement was 35 centimetres, to add in some allowance for the hem at the bottom, which will need 1.5 centimetres, and for the casing for the waistband. So on the regular one, you'd need about 4.5 centimetres. So if I was making this, I used a 42 centimetre piece of fabric in length. And for this one, because I'm adding that little ruffle at the top, I've added 12 centimetres. So what started off at 35 centimetres, or what will end up at 35 centimetres, I used 47 centimetres in length, so I added quite a bit to that. But that's all on there, and that's just to allow for all your extra fabric. Obviously, like I said, when you try it on your model, you can always cut off fabric, but it's far harder to stick it back on than it is to cut it off. So what I'm doing now is I'm just pinning around the bottom edge. So this bit here, the one that's more inside my skirt, when I'm happy that it is 6.5 centimetres all the way around. Now it's important, especially when you do the simple waistband, that you do leave enough fabric. If you're a little bit small, then you've got the chance that your elastic might not fit through the channel that you've made if it's a bit too narrow, and then it looks a little bit tight and a bit unsightly, and probably isn't the most comfortable for the wearer because it sort of bends the elastic out of shape slightly. Starting to wonder whether I might need some glasses because I can't really see the screen from over there to see any questions, which will be a really good time to answer questions. So like I'm staring into space. Oh yes, Donna's just mentioned the sewing bee. Oh, gosh, I feel like I need to talk to humans about this. Normally be doing this in a workshop. Who did you want to win? Who did you like? I think there was some absolutely fab stuff on there. Definitely got me going again, thinking about what ideas I'd like for my summer wardrobe. And some lovely fabric choices as well. So that's ironed and pinned all the way around. So the first step is going to be to sew this into place. So if you did this simple waistband, you would prep this in exactly the same way. So we're going to be sewing really quite close to this bottom edge here, about 0.5 centimetre away. So if you did the simple waistband, then you would do it in exactly the same way. You'd be about 0.5 centimetre away from this bottom edge here. So not at the top of the skirt, actually more into the skirt. And we're going to be leaving a gap to fit our elastic through. So I tend to like to leave my gap around the seam. So not probably on the seam, but fairly close to it. So the gap I'm going to leave, I'm probably going to leave a gap of about 4 centimetres, 3 or 4 centimetres, enough to comfortably fit that elastic through. So it's really important now that you do get those 3 stitches forward and 3 stitches backwards in, because you're going to be putting quite a lot of stress under this now with putting the elastic into place. So nice and secure now. So remember, these stitches are visible. Your side seam wasn't, but this is, so you want to make sure you've got a nice coordinating thread and that you're nice and neat at this stage. So this skirt for days cost about £3.50, obviously on the elastic as well. So still under £4. And the nice thing with this is, depending on the age of your child, you're likely to have a little bit left that you can do some matching bobbles or something. So the purple fabric that I did on Monday, we made some bobbles. One for Daisy and one for a little friend. I must have to put my bobble pattern, well, not my bobble pattern, but the bobble pattern that I use and recommend on the page again, because it's just so handy with any bit of scrap that I have. So I'm really trying to make sure that waistband sits nice and flat. It's not going to get twisted or pushed by the machine. What can sometimes happen if you don't put your pins in is that the sewing machine has its own ideas and starts to twist the waistband, and then you get a bit of a puckered effect, which ultimately isn't the end of the world, because obviously it's gathered, so it would just disappear into that, but it's definitely nice if you can keep it flat. So I'm getting back to some of the beginning, and I just need to make sure that I remember to leave that gap. Just be extra cautious when you go over your French seam because they can be quite bulky, so your machine might struggle a tiny bit, so just be aware of that. Don't always pull your fabric rather than pushing into it and pushing your fingers into the needle. So I've got my channel now. So like I said, if I was doing the regular, the standard skirt, I would just go ahead and slip my elastic in and pull it all the way around. Because I'm doing the paper bag waistband, what I want to do is I want to sew about 3 centimetres away from my stitching line. So I'm going to grab my ruler now and my trick marker and just measure that out. And the reason we're doing that extra line of stitching is to create that casing and that frill at the top. So I will do this as quick as I can, trying to bore everyone too much. I left a 4 centimetre gap just to fit the elastic through. Probably doesn't need to be that big, but it's definitely better larger than trying to squeeze it through, battle with it through a little gap. So I'll just join my marks up. So what you get is about 3 centimetres at the top. That obviously creates that nice ruffled effect. And you could always do this when you were doing a drawstring bag, to get that nice ruffled effect. When we were doing Christmas Hessian sacks this year at Christmas, we did that and it just gave it a really nice finish. So everyone can see that. So the trick marker is just an air erasable pen. So it looks a little bit scary that I'm just drawing purple marker pen all over my beautiful skirt, but it will disappear within the space of about 24 hours, sometimes a little bit longer depending on the fabric. Obviously you could use tailor's chalk or tailor's pencils. They just come off in the wash, and I'm doing it on the inside of the skirt, so if you did find your little person wanted to wear it before you could get that in the wash and get that chalk off, then obviously it wouldn't be the end of the world because it would be on the inside of the skirt. Right, it's nearly back to the beginning now. There we go. So this pen is called a trick marker. It's an air erasable pen. You can get all different types of one. You can get heat erasable pens called friction pens, which are amazing, but then sometimes you need to iron what it is you've marked on, which is the only downside, because then you iron it and all your beautiful markings disappear. And you can get water erasable ones as well. I like this one just because I know that it's going to disappear, and I don't need to wash it if it's something you don't particularly want to wash, or if I'm going to use heat on it, I'm not worrying about erasing it. So this time with my line, I'm going to go all the way around. I don't need to leave a gap, so we're going all in one line. So because I'm going to complete my circle, I'm not going to start with any securing stitches. I'm going to do them all at the end. So now I've got back to the beginning, I'm going to go over my original stitches by about 3 stitches to overlap them. and then do 3 backwards and 3 forwards. So just an all that securing process all in one, just because it makes sense really. So yes, so 3 centimetres channel. So if you've got inch wide elastic, 25mm elastic, there's enough to fit the elastic through, and also just a little bit of wiggle room as well. I've got 19mm elastic, so I could have made that casing smaller if I'd wanted to, but that'll be absolutely fine. So that's the gap. I don't tend to wash my material before I sew, actually, Julie, and the reason is because I've used some of the same suppliers for quite a long time, and I've made so many things. I really trust the fabric's not going to shrink, because what I tend to do is, if I'm going with a new supplier or buying a new type of fabric, I tend to wash it first and then see if it shrinks. So say for instance, like when I first got jerseys in, if I got 100% cotton jersey or the like polyester one, I would cut a square and measure the square, put it in the wash, and then measure it afterwards. So now I've got a bit of confidence, so I am a bit blasé with fabric. Lots of people do, and that's completely wise. What I don't tend to do is put them in the tumble dryer. Cotton actually is absolutely fine, but Dan has shrunk a few of my homemade garments by putting them in the tumble dryer. But anyway, we won't talk about that. So next step is elastic. So I have measured Daisy's waist, and I've taken about 5 centimetres off it so that it's nice and snug. Now obviously I'm hoping if your little people aren't awake now and you're making it without them, it's peace and quiet, then obviously you can pop this in and you don't need to secure the end now before you try it on. So I've taken Daisy's waist measurement and taken 5 centimetres off it. So I'm going to take one safety pin and pop it on one end to act as a bit of a needle. And I'm going to take another safety pin on the other end, and I'm just going to attach it to that French seam, just so that it doesn't ping through. My elastic is half the measurement of my fabric, so you can imagine you're busily threading it through, and then you get to a certain point and you realise that the end of your elastic is somewhere in this end of your skirt, and you've got to start the whole thing again. So I'm just going to tuck it in my casing. So the idea with the elastic, a bit like when you've done the ribbon, if you've done the ribbon on the drawstring bag, is that you push your fabric onto your pin, and then once it's full, you pull the pin and pull the fabric. And what you want to try and do as best you can for this is keep your elastic nice and flat. If it twists now, then it's much harder at the end to get those twists out and get it looking nice and flat. And it's heartbreaking to thread your elastic through and realise you've got a twist in it. You've got to do the whole thing again. So this is a good one for me trying to... Oh, I've just got an email through there. I can just see it pops at the top of my screen from one of my suppliers saying that there's fabric on the way. So I've been looking forward to that since beginning of last week. So I'm excited about that. Quite a lot of jerseys. I think it's all jerseys actually on that one. Lots of animal prints, some flamingos, things like that. I've got a couple of jersey projects in the pipeline that I thought would be quite good. Don't worry, Jane. You know you could do this asleep, Jane. So I'm carrying on going all the way around. It feels like forever. I'm just really trying to make sure that that elastic isn't twisting at any point. It's not going to cause me any problems. Yes, Jay's got the nice neon leopard print that came in and literally sold out before I'd even got a chance to so much as get my mitts on it. Like a nice neon snake print, a yellow one. The flamingos one is quite cool as well. I'm trying to think what else we've got, and then some more pleated stuff as well. So we've got blue, peach, gold and silver today, and I think black and green are coming as well. So I'm almost at the end. I'm just going to peep that safety pin back out, and I'm just going to double check that it is all nice and flat all the way around. So at this stage you can take your safety pin off your seam, now you know you've not lost it. So I've got both ends of my elastic and I've pulled them out of the casing just to make this next step easier. So rather than doing a seam like that, like right sides together and having a bulky bit of elastic, what I'm actually going to do is just lay them one on top of the other, and I'm going to overlap them probably by about 1 centimetre. Like that, and I'm going to do a nice broad zigzag just to secure them together. So it's not the end of the world what this looks like. If you've been sewing with like teal thread and whatever, it doesn't match, no one's ever going to see this, so it doesn't matter too much. So don't be precious about this, it's going to hide in your casing. So my zigzag, I don't know if you can see my settings, I know they're backwards so it doesn't make it very easy. My zigzag is 4, and then I'm going to make the width of the zigzag, so how wide it is, as big as it will go, and it goes all the way up to 7 on my machine. And then the length, I'm not going to worry too much about that, it automatically comes set on at 1.4 on mine, but I'm just going to do a few stitches forward and a few stitches back to go a bit crazy on it so it's nice and secure. There we go. So that is certainly not the most attractive piece of sewing that I've ever done, but it doesn't matter too much because then it's going to dissipate into the case, and so you want to pull that back so that your elastic disappears from your gap. So you can start to get an idea of what the skirt looks like, but of course first you just need to adjust that gap. So before you sew your elastic together, it's definitely always a good idea just to check on your child that it's not too tight or it's not too baggy so it's not going to fall down. So if you've gone to zigzag stitches, of course you need to go back down to your nice straight stitches. And then I'm just going to patch over my gap. And then remove that little pin. So now is an ideal time just to kind of adjust all of those gathers in the fabric so they're all nice and even, like that. And then some of you might have found that I've got a pair of leggings that do it like running exercise pants, where the elastic in it constantly twists. So to stop that happening, what I'm going to do is around the side seam, so that if you've got 2 then it's ideal to do both this. So in that seam what I'm going to do is something called stitching in the ditch. If you're a patch worker, a quilter, you'll know all about this. So I'm just going to do a little line of stitches sewing from the right side to the outside of the skirt down there just to stop it slipping and twisting around, and then I'm going to repeat on the opposite side. So if you've got PJ bottoms that do this, shot boat ones, then this is such a great little trick just to stop them from annoying the hell out of you when you get them out of the wash or when you're wearing them and they just constantly twist around in the casing. So because I've only got one side seam on mine, I'm just going to go to the opposite side of my skirt, and it doesn't matter too much where it is because obviously at the end of the day it's gathered, so it's going to disappear in there, and I'm just going to go from the top of my casing to the bottom. Just cut my threads off. I always tend to do it as I go, just to make it easier at the end. So it's like a little line of sewing there, and it just stops it from twisting around in its case. So that is the skirt so far. So you can see that paper bag waistband. This is a nice easy detail to hack to add onto a pair of pants. It's a really flattering waistband is this. So that's the top done, and now I'm going to do the hem. Obviously, like I keep recommending, I would keep trying it on and off. I know sometimes that does involve a bit of bribery depending on how old your child is. So back to the ironing board, and there is quite a bit of ironing with this project. Where's my ruler? I've abandoned it. So the hem I'm going to do is a double hem. It's a nice, neat hem, again, so that all the raw edges are enclosed. So I've done a bit of a memory hem, just so I don't bore pants off people too much. So I've gone all the way around from the bottom, pressing up by 1.5 centimetres. And I've done that all the way around my skirt. And now what I want to do is actually sort of tuck the raw edge here back in on itself. So I'm not folding over again and making it even wider. I'm making it quite a small hem. So sometimes if you've got it on a pattern, it might be called a narrow hem. Sometimes it's called a double hem. If you've got jeans or a man's shirt or a cotton blouse, you'll find it's the hem that's on the bottom of those. It's a really nice, durable, neat hem. So I'm just taking that raw edge and sort of tucking it to the line that I've just made. And so it ends up being about 7.5 mils, so it's only small. So if you're thinking, God, this is tiny, it is pretty tiny. And again, I'm going to put some pins in that, just so that it stays where I want it to. Try and make sure to put them the right way around, which I never seem to manage. Again, I'll try and keep my eyes on questions. Yes, exactly, Hazel. If you've done lots of aprons, this is the same hem that you'll be very, very well acquainted with on the aprons. I've actually had to buy like a hanging door hook thing to go over the back of your door for our dining room, because I have actually made that many aprons for various different craft activities and salt dough and painting and tea. So I think we've definitely well and truly got enough aprons now to last us for the foreseeable future, but they just are so handy, they're so well used. I need to do myself one now. Might be another idea, maybe a little vintage penny or something for a session. I don't know if anybody noticed, I popped a couple more events on for next week. So there's a one-piece purse. The things that we've done previously in social sewing are these ones that work really, really well. And I know people have always said it's hard to get to social sewing, especially if you live far away. So hopefully there'll be some nice ones. And really, you just need fabric. So for the one-piece purse, you need a bit of interfacing and a strip of fabric. And for the origami bag, you need about 2.5 meters of fabric. And they are both some of my favourite makes that we've ever done. Oh, Daisy, oh, thank you, Mary. God knows whether Daisy will wear this. She wore a purple one, she was very happy wearing this, but Daisy's her own stylist. She doesn't really like wearing clothes anyway at the moment in this lockdown. She's absolutely loving it, loving just being a nudie Rudy. So we'll see whether I can get this on her tomorrow. Getting this on her and getting a nice picture of her are two different things though, so they watch this space. Okie dokie, so that's all pinned in place now. Let's move the ironing board. So a nice little dinky hem, like that. And where I want to be sewing is this sort of side, so not really near the bottom, more towards inside the skirt, but I want to be really quite close to that. It's called edge stitching, and edge stitch literally means on the edge, so that it really traps all those edges you've just really carefully folded in. If you're more in the middle or more towards the bottom of the skirt, there's a chance it's going to unflick and obviously unfold all of those lovely raw edges that you've just pressed in. So I'm going to take my box off of this just to make it, a little bit easier. And then just tuck it under. So if you've got the ability on your machine to move your needle position, it might be a nice time to do it. So I don't know how much you can see this. I'm going to see if I can get that camera a little bit further in there. So what I'm going to do on my machine, I've got the ability to just move the needle position over. So I'm going to move it so that I'm getting really nice and closely on the edge, but I've got a nice guide to follow as well. So I'm not bothered too much about where I'm starting or finishing this hem. Obviously, again, it's one continuous line of sewing. So rather than secure now and again at the end, I'm just going to do it all at one time. So this one might be a nice one to do with the children. Again, it's, what is it? This one's 5 lines of stitching, but the simple skirt's 4, and they're all straight lines. So, I mean, some of the tricky bits maybe like this, they could obviously always power the foot pedal and you could do handwork, but a lot of it, especially if you've got a speed controller on your machine, it's just straight lines. A little bit of maths in there to make it semi-educational. Bits of multiplication. And obviously maybe a nice break from homeschooling if you're trying to do that at the moment. So if anyone can think of any questions now, I will try and keep my eye on it so that I can answer some of those before the end of the live. So I mentioned before when we were doing the waistband about getting over the French seam. So if you struggle, never push into the machine to try and encourage it over that. If there is any bulk and you're struggling, if you put a bit of gentle pressure on the back and just slightly pull as you put your foot over your foot pedal, then it will just encourage it to move over there without obviously any risk of you pushing into your needle. And then when I get over my original stitches, I'm going to go over an overlap by about 3 and then reverse 3 and then forward 3. Again, because it's visible stitching, I want to minimise the amount of visible stitches or any unsightly stitches. And because we're going all the way around, we might as well do it all in one. Same size, yes, I probably would recommend the same size elastic jacket for a adult's waistband. So when we did the elasticated skirts last week with the pleated jersey, we used the inch wide elastic. I've just used 19mm for that, but I would still use the same for an adult as well. It's nice enough thickness for a waistband. I do love 25mm elastic, inch wide elastic. It's very versatile. So if you're making pyjama bottoms or shorts, then again I would probably use that as well. It's just nice and comfortable, so it looks like a nice waistband without it sort of creasing too much, and it's not too thin. So the reason we didn't make a channel for the elastic with a jersey skirt the other week was because it just doesn't have the stability that cotton does, but obviously it presses really nice and easily if you're using a nice woven fabric, and it will stay put. So if anybody's wondering why I've made 2 skirts in completely different ways, then that is the main reason, is because obviously jersey doesn't particularly iron very well, it doesn't really listen to the words you say, so you kind of got to manhandle it a little bit more than this. How do you stop a jersey one rolling over? I'll personal message you about that one, Becky, because I'm not 100% sure what you mean. So that is my paper bag waistband. Like I said, all of the information in terms of measuring and calculating how much fabric you need, how much to add for the hem, the overlap, the casing, etc. It's all on that little handout there on the Facebook page. So I'll be around for the rest of tonight, and the hem and I will try and answer any messages. So on our website it does tell you how wide all of the fabrics are, so if you know it's 150 wide, like this one, you know there's loads of scope, even an adult would fit in 150 wide, most of us would anyway, so little children would be absolutely fine. Obviously if it's 112 wide, then you might just need to think, if you've got an older child, whether you need to like double the amount of fabric or not. Jane Bar, where's Dan? Dan absolutely begged to do the beginning of this tutorial tonight, and I said no way, I wouldn't let him do it. He popped up on Monday, everybody, and said that he was going to do tonight's tutorial, and there's just no way on earth I'm going to let him do that. I hope everybody enjoyed that. Be prepared to see some nice follow-ons for this in the next few weeks. A few people said shorts, and I've got a few shorts patterns, a cotton one and a jersey leggings short pattern in the pipeline. So hopefully everyone will like to kind of build on those skills that we've done tonight. So thank you very much everybody for watching.